If you're finding it difficult to divide your time and your energy effectively between your work and your family responsibilities, and if you feel stressed because you never seem to have enough time for yourself, you may be struggling with work-life balance. In this episode, you'll learn some words and phrases connected to work-life balance, and we'll talk about ways you may be able to manage your time better and get a much better and improved work-life balance. Welcome to
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hello, and if you're a new listener to the podcast, you're very, very welcome. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And with more than 50 years of teaching between us, we'll help you improve your English, take it to the next level, and today improve your work-life balance. How are you, Reza?
I'm not bad, although my work-life balance hasn't been ideal in the last week or so. I've been doing more corrections than I would have liked, so a little bit tired, but okay. What about you?
Well, I'm very excited to be talking about this topic today because, like you, I'm struggling a bit with it at the moment. So I'm hoping that discussing it together, maybe you or the listeners might have some advice for me. So let's see how we go with work-life balance. But before that, we have a voice message.
Hi, Reza. Hi, Kerry. My name is Scarlett Moreno. I'm from Nicaragua. I want to say thanks for all the time you spend your time teaching us English. I'm learning English a long time ago, but I had to have a break because I had Bell's palsy. And now I feel better and I recover my time learning English with you guys. My next question is, how can I get a call for person program? Because I want to get a job in a call center. So if you explain us for the people to have a job in a call center, please. Regard from Nicaragua. Goodbye.
Thank you very much for your message. It's always a pleasure to hear from our listeners in Nicaragua. We didn't catch your first name because of the quality of the audio. We did understand that I think your surname is Morena, but we didn't catch your first name, so I apologize.
Yes, it was a very, very nice message. Thank you. But as Craig said, there was a little bit of difficulty hearing certain words because of the audio. But thanks very much for getting in touch. And your main question was about jobs in call centers. Well, how do you get a job in a call center? I'm not exactly sure about that, but we have recorded an episode about customer service and the typical expressions used in a call center. So I'm sure that could be useful. What episode was that, Craig? Can you remember?
Yes, that was 396. So to listen to that, go to inglespodcast.com/396, and we hope that those expressions there will help you. One thing I would definitely suggest is to go to LinkedIn, make sure you have a presence and a profile on LinkedIn, update the information if necessary, and to find work, either use LinkedIn or maybe do a Google search for agencies. And obviously you need to study English because call centers need English, a very high level. So if you need to practice conversation, if you want to join my conversation course, that's one idea that will help your fluency. And anyone listening who'd be interested in improving their speaking and their communication skills, send me an email at Craig, Craig, at inglespodcast.com, and I'll give you more information about how to join the next course. And if anyone wants to improve their English, they can also study with you, Reza, correct?
Yes, if you're interested in a one-to-one class, that means just you and me, get in touch with me. you can write me an email and send it to belfastreza@gmail.com. Though I have to say you might need to be patient because I'm very, very busy at the moment. So you may have to wait a few weeks before I get back to you. But who knows? Hopefully we can work something out.
One thing I did notice in the message was you said, I have recovered my time to studying English. I would put that a bit differently. I would say I've now got back to studying English, using the phrasal verb to get back to something. Or maybe I've returned to studying English would be a little more formal.
Now, we're going to call you Morena because that's the only name we heard. We don't know if that's your first name or your surname, Morena. But if you do get a job in a call center, you'll be interested in your work-life balance. That's what we're going to talk about today. So anybody who has a job needs to look for the right work-life balance. This idea was another idea, not the first idea, that we've had from Mamen from Badajoz. She's made quite a few good suggestions recently. We have touched on it before. We've mentioned a few things about it. If you go to episode 481, there's a link in the show notes. So inglespodcast.com/481. You will get some information about being successful and ways of achieving that, which is related to work-life balance. But this episode is specifically about work-life balance, 100%.
So what is work-life balance? Maybe we should explain that first of all. It's achieving or getting a very healthy division or balance between when you're working and your personal life, because you don't want to be working too much, but you want to be working enough to be successful. How balanced do you think your life is, Reza?
It's not bad compared to some other people in other sectors, in other industries. But, sometimes I do feel that I am obliged to spend a lot of my unpaid time that I'm not paid for, doing things which are related to my classes. So I am, as well as working for myself, I am also employed, and my employer expects me to dedicate a lot of time to preparing classes and doing corrections. And that's time that I don't get paid for. And it's part of the job as a teacher. That doesn't bother me at all. But the question is exactly how much time. And, sometimes when I have a class which, is 3 hours a week of class, but I'm having to spend 4 or 5 hours of correction on that class, which I don't get paid for, that can become a bit annoying. So this is the type of thing we're talking about, the work-life balance. Should I have to spend 5 hours per week on a class which lasts 3 hours and I get paid the 3 hours only for that? Those 5 hours are in my free time I'm not paid for. What do you think, Craig?
Well, I'm in a slightly different position to you. I don't get told by my employer when I work and when I don't work. I'm self-employed. So I decide when I work and when I don't work. But I am finding it difficult to find that balance. And really, I can't complain because, look, some people have families, they have children, they're working full time, they need to balance their social life with their family life. And some people have parents who are old. Unfortunately, my parents passed away. They're not with me anymore. So I don't have that responsibility of taking care of my parents either. So in theory, it shouldn't be too complicated, but nevertheless, I'm finding it difficult to juggle the different aspects of my work and my private life. And that verb to juggle, you may have seen a clown juggling at a circus, throwing things up in the air and catching them. And in a similar way, I'm throwing my work up in the air, trying to catch it, and I'm not juggling very well with these different aspects.
And one of the factors which makes juggling with all these different aspects difficult is time. Time, of course, is limited. There are only 24 hours in the day. We can't change that. No one can change that. Sometimes we'd like there to be more, but there aren't. So organizing and planning how you spend your time management, in other words, is a very important aspect about work-life balance. You need to ask yourself, how can I best use my time? That may mean that, for example, you want to do all of your work in the morning if you possibly can. Get up early in the morning, start early, finish by around about lunchtime. But that might not work for everybody. That might make you too tired. So it may be more efficient for other people to start not so early in the morning, get a few hours done, stop for lunch, then continue working after lunch. It depends, I guess, on what suits you. It also depends on what type of work you're doing. Mental work, like teaching, it tires your brain. Just like physical labor tires your muscles, there's only so long that you can correct people's essays. Believe me, after about 3 or 4 hours, you can't do it very well anymore. You simply have to rest your brain and do something else. Would you agree, Craig?
Well, that's something I think I have managed to find an answer to, because I know that I'm more active psychologically. My brain is more alive in the morning. So as soon as I've had breakfast and a coffee, I sit down and I do, let's say, knowledge work where I have to think and really plan things out and use my brain a lot. Whereas after lunch, I'm more lethargic, I'm more tired. It's difficult for me to think clearly. So then I do the more mechanical tasks. So knowing when you're more alive, are you an early bird? Better in the morning. Are you a night owl? Better at night. Knowing how your brain works can really help you divide your time and manage your time. But Reza, do you use any time management tools to help you plan your day or your week?
Well, what do you mean by that? What would be your definition of a time management tool?
Well, it could be anything. For example, I use a paper diary so that I write work I need to do on a particular day on that day. And I know first thing in the morning without thinking, I need to edit this podcast, for example. I also use Google Calendar. So I know on Google Calendar, the really important things go there. And that's the first thing I look at. Am I teaching today? What time? That cannot be moved. Do I have to go to the doctor or the dentist? Any important appointments? If it's on the calendar, it can't be moved. So that is the sacred document. And then my other work gets placed around that. You can also use a timer on your computer to time how long things take you. And I'll put a link in the show notes to the one I use that's free. So if you can't measure what you're doing, you can't improve it. If you don't know how long something takes you to do, for example, marking a student's essay, then you can't improve the time it's taking you. So I think measuring time is also important when you're working.
Yes. In that case, I can say, yes, I also use time management tools. I use a diary in a similar way to you. Also, I actually set timers.
On your phone?
Yeah. So I start something and I set a timer and I give myself, let's say, 2 hours to do it, because I know from my past experience that after those 2 hours, I start becoming far less efficient and it takes me far longer to do that task because my brain is now more tired. So quite often I'll set an alarm. After the 2 hours, I'll stop, even if I got more work to do, take a break for 20 minutes and then go back to what I was doing. And I find that way I'm more efficient. My brain keeps working efficiently. Whereas if I didn't set that timer and I just worked through, as time goes on, it would take me longer and longer and longer for each correction, for example. So it's very important to time breaks, I believe.
So then you must be aware of Parkinson's law.
No, I'm aware of Parkinson's disease when your body shakes, but what's Parkinson's law?
Parkinson's law states that the work you do expands to fill the time you give to it. So if you say, okay, I'm going to correct 2 essays in 2 hours, then that is how long it will take you, because you're looking for every small little thing that could possibly be better. Whereas if you say, no, I'm doing this in half an hour, that focus of 30 minutes makes you do that task in 30 minutes. And that's true with everything. If you need to tidy your house, for example, if you do it in an hour and that's your time limit, you will probably do it in an hour. Otherwise, it could take you all of the morning because it expands to fill the time that you give to it.
One thing which I think I'm pretty good at, I have to say, is prioritization. Yeah, so deciding what are your priorities.
How do you do it?
I'm very, very good at, I think, bearing in mind deadlines when something has to be done. The best time of day that I find for doing that type of thing. So it's different depending on whether it's a physical activity or a mental activity for me. Also, in the surroundings where I'm going to be when I do it. Am I going to be at home? Am I going to be in a public place? Am I going to be in a quiet place? And I'm quite good, I have to say, at taking all of those factors into account and then prioritizing, okay, I have to do task A at this time on this day, task B at this time on this day, and task, etc. I'm quite good at that.
Does that go into your paper diary?
Yes. Yeah, it does.
That's a good system. There are also the 4 boxes, the 4-box idea, where you have 4 separate categories. One category you label important but not urgent. Another category is important and urgent. Another category, not important and not urgent. Another category, not important but urgent. So when work arrives in your inbox by email or on your desk or whatever, you can put it in one of those boxes and then use those boxes to categorize the order you work on it. So for long-term planning, important but not urgent. If it's important and urgent, do it now. If it's not important and it's not urgent, don't do it. And if it's not important but urgent, maybe you could delegate it to somebody else, or you could automate it in a system that does it automatically for you.
Yes, I'm quite good at doing that kind of just naturally, but I do write it down as well. But it comes to me naturally, and I'm pretty good at blocking out what I consider to be not urgent and not important things. I just block them out of my mind. I may not think about them for a day or two. Things that I do have to do at some stage, but I think, well, it won't be today or tomorrow. So I just get those thoughts out of my mind and I just think about what I have to do today.
Well, you're very lucky. I'm envious. I decide not to do things like that, but it plays on my mind. If something plays on your mind, it goes back into your head. You think about it again. And yeah, I start to feel guilty, even though it's not urgent or important. It's still there in my mind somewhere. So you're very lucky. I mentioned delegation before, which is giving tasks to other people to do. Now, if you're lucky and you have teenage kids, you could delegate some household tasks to your kids. Maybe you need your car cleaned, or your floor mopped or swept, or your kitchen cleaned. Then if you have kids, that's a great way to delegate work and get them to do it.
Or whether you have kids or not, you might want to pay someone to do those things. You might want to pay someone to clean your house, for example, to pay a cleaner. Well, should you or shouldn't you? Okay, it depends. Well, if you don't have enough money to pay them, well, you simply can't. But if you do have enough money, you have to ask yourself, well, this money I'm going to pay, is it equal to or more than or less than I could be earning in this hour if I were free? So let's say, for example, in an hour, you're able to earn, let's say, 20 euros. And you really need to earn those 20 euros and you have the possibility of earning those 20 euros, but you really need to clean your house, but you haven't got time. Well, if you can pay someone 10 or 15 euros to clean the house, then you could say that it's beneficial for you to pay someone because in the meantime, yeah, that means at the same time, you could be earning 20 euros while you pay someone 10 or maybe even up to 15 to clean your house. So you get both things done. You get the house cleaned and you make a total profit of €5.
Unless, of course, you really, really enjoy cleaning your house or fixing your toilet, in which case you might be prepared to pay €5 to give you the pleasure of doing it yourself. But if you think about it logically, it makes sense to pay somebody else if it's less money than you're earning.
Another important aspect when it comes to work-life balance is boundaries. In other words, limits. You have to be realistic. You have to set limits, boundaries on your work time and availability.
What are boundaries?
Boundaries are limits, places that you cannot, or lines that you cannot go past. For example, you might think, well, today I'm free all day. So I'm a teacher, for example. I'm going to work from 8 o'clock in the morning until 11 o'clock in the evening. I'm free all day. Yeah, maybe, but is that a good idea? I don't think so. Nobody should attempt to teach from 8 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night all day. Let's say you stop for just, half an hour or an hour to eat. Your brain will be so tired by the end of it that you won't be very productive. It may even be counterproductive. You might lose work as a result because your students might think by 9 or 10 or 11 o'clock in the evening that you're doing a terrible job because you're really tired and your brain is not working very well. They might not want to come back to your classes because you didn't set a sensible boundary. Think, can I really do this work? Even though I'm free to do it, it doesn't mean I can do it effectively. You simply have to block out some time for yourself. Call it me time if you like. Time which is for you to relax or to do what you want, which is not work.
I'm really, really bad at setting boundaries. For example, yesterday I worked from 9:30 in the morning until 10 p.m. in the evening, obviously with breaks to eat food. But I was working over 12 hours, more than 12 hours. But to be fair, I just come back from a 5-day holiday mini break. So I had a lot of work to do, but I'm really bad at setting boundaries and saying, no, I'm going to do some exercise for an hour or two, or I'm going to stop working at 7 and finish the following day. What about you? Do you find it hard to separate your personal life from your work when you have to correct at home, for example, or plan lessons?
Yes, more and more. It was easier in the past than it is now. Because like many people, I work a lot more online now than I used to. Well, I didn't really work online at all 5 or 10 years ago. Now, the majority of my work's probably online. And online means that for most people, you're going to be working in your house. So yes, there's the mixture there of work and home. So already the boundaries between your professional and your home life are being blurred because you know that your lunch is just round the corner there in the kitchen while you're in the study, and you should be starting at 1:30 your lunch. But, you got a little bit more work to do. So does it really matter if I work a bit more until 2 o'clock or vice versa? You might think at 1:15, well, I know I said I would work until 1:30, but I'm really hungry now and the food's just over there in the kitchen. So you might finish earlier than you should have. Of course, when you're outside the home, you can't do that. You've got to get home. So in a way, I think it's harder to keep the boundaries separate when you work online at home. Would you agree, Craig?
Yeah, definitely. So anyone listening, if you have any strategies, ideas, things that can help us set healthy boundaries with work, please let us know. The things that we can think of, well, obviously, if you do finish work at the end of the day or go away for a weekend break, turn off your phone, perhaps at least have an auto reply set on your emails so that people know that you're not available and they get a polite reply saying, I'm sorry, I'm not answering emails at the moment. And as you said, Reza, working at home is problematic, but I think it helps to separate your workspace from your living area and your relaxing area. That's really difficult for me because my desk is in the middle of the living room. So it's really difficult for me to separate. I don't have space to separate my work area from my relaxation area. So I'm constantly at my desk working.
Something I've noticed that helps me a lot recently, when I have just like 30 minutes between classes online. Until recently, I just stayed at home. Maybe I left my study and went to the living room, but it didn't feel like a proper break. Now I've started forcing myself to leave the house. So by the time I put my shoes on, walk down the stairs, get out, I can only actually be out of the house for about 15 minutes. But it is worth it, I've discovered. It does make a difference. I physically leave my house, go into the street, and it's a new atmosphere then. It's different. It's a new environment. Also, I get a bit of clean, fresh air in the street, oxygen, see new things, and then come back just 10 or 15 minutes later. And it makes a big difference. It really helps. Do you ever do that?
I should. And thank you for the suggestion. I will try and implement that next week because I often think, oh, it's only 30 minutes. I'll just make a coffee or have a cup of tea and check my emails. But getting up from your desk, moving around, as you say, going outside for 15 minutes. Yeah, I'm going to try and do that next week. Now, one result of not setting your boundaries effectively so that they're healthy is to experience burnout. That's a phrasal noun, burnout, B-U-R-N-O-U-T, which is emotional exhaustion. You just feel so exhausted and so tired because you've had this stress about work for so long. But how do you know if you have burnout? What are the symptoms? And how do you know if you're becoming a workaholic? Any ideas?
For me, one sign would be that you just can't relax even when it's your free time. There are some people, I'm lucky, I've very rarely been in that situation myself, but I do know people who, even when they have free time, simply can't relax. They've always got something on their mind about work, something troubling them. I would say those people are suffering from burnout. They're going to burn themselves out. They're going to be like a fire which burns everything, so there's nothing left to burn. In other words, they're going to use up all their energy and all their mental and physical energy. They have to turn off. If you are unable to turn off, you're probably a workaholic. You're probably suffering burnout. Or if not now, well, very soon. They are the alarm bells.
And I like that analogy of the fire very much, because if you imagine a fire that's burned out, then just think of yourself not having any energy. You feel drained, which means exhausted. You really find it difficult to move around. You could also be irritable, argumentative, and suffer from insomnia. You can't sleep at night. You're thinking about work. As Reza said, your mind is constantly working, but your body is tired. You feel unmotivated. And maybe you're drinking too much alcohol. You're finishing that bottle of wine or having an extra whiskey. So excess alcohol could also be a symptom of burnout.
Yes, I've noticed that from time to time, I have used alcohol not as an alcoholic. I'm definitely not an alcoholic.
I think you're an alcoholic.
I'm an alcoholic. That's someone who's addicted to AIRC, aprender inglés with Rez and Craig. No, but what I mean is I finished my work. It's been a heavy day and I thought I want to go to sleep now quickly, but my mind's buzzing. All the thoughts of working it. I know I'll have a couple of glasses of wine and that will make me dozy.
Relaxes you.
And it will. But is that really a good idea? I do it, but then I ask myself, yeah, it's so sad that I thought, oh, the best thing I should do now is have a glass of wine to make me forget about work. I wish I had some strategy to just forget quickly about work without having to have a glass of wine to do it. So don't get me wrong, listeners. Don't misunderstand me. I don't do this every day or every week, but occasionally when I've had a very heavy day of work or week, I think, oh, I need that glass of wine and that will send me to sleep. it probably doesn't make any difference. Probably if I just waited 10 minutes, I'd feel sleepy anyway. But I've got this idea in my mind, like many people, that, oh, a drink, that's what you need now. That'll help you go to sleep. Has that ever happened to you?
No, well, we see it on movies, don't we? But no, I don't tend to drink. But we see on American movies, the guy will come in, usually a guy comes in from work, pours himself a scotch, a whiskey, and then another one, and sits down on the sofa, relaxes at the end of the day with alcohol. So we're used to seeing that on the TV so often. But one thing, if you are an entrepreneur, if you're working by yourself, you're self-employed, you may be tempted to multitask, especially if you don't have the budget or the money to pay a personal assistant or someone to help you, or you're not working in a team and you can't delegate work. Well, you might try multitasking, which is doing more than one thing at the same time. What do you think, Reza? Is that a good idea? And what things, if any, can be multitasked effectively?
That's a very good question. I suppose if you have no choice but to multitask because you haven't got enough time to get everything done, if you don't do some things at the same time, I would imagine that it's easier to mix a physical activity with a mental one at the same time. So mixing two mental activities, I don't know. I don't know if I've got the capacity, and obviously two physical activities. Also, I haven't got the strength. So I would imagine that if it's one physical activity mixed with one mental activity, it would be easier. What do you reckon?
Absolutely. For example, improving your English while you're working and doing exercise, or cleaning the flat, or shopping, or walking the dog, and you're listening not necessarily to our podcast, which thank you for doing that, but also any podcast that you can use to improve your knowledge of your career. So if you need to learn a new skill, if you need to improve your current skills related to your job, there are many, many podcasts that you can listen to in English and in your language that will help you to improve your knowledge while you're doing a physical activity. And also, if you're walking in the street or even driving, you could have telephone conversations. If you have a meeting, for example, you could connect on your phone. Obviously, don't hold your phone if you're driving. Make sure you're on hands-free in the car. But you can make some calls, have some telephone conversations while you're doing a physical activity. And that's multitasking.
Craig, as an ordinary man, I see sometimes these very gifted people in public multitasking in a way which really impresses me. They might be, for example, doing the shopping at the same time speaking on the phone. It might be a work matter, something to do with work, and feeding a baby all at the same time. They might have a baby in one arm, the phone in the other hand, feeding the baby milk, talking on the phone, buying the shopping, taking it from the shelves in the supermarket. These people really impress me. They're called women. Have you ever seen any of them?
Yeah, I have seen women multitasking very, very efficiently and effectively. I personally find it very difficult to do two things at once, and I struggle to walk and talk at the same time. So I think in general, women are much better at multitasking than men. Would you agree?
Hats off to you ladies. I believe that the stereotype is true, I'm afraid to say. Women do tend to be better multitaskers than men. Or is it just that they do it because someone has to do it? Maybe men could be just as good as women, but we can't be bothered. We're not prepared to make the effort. That might be true, I don't know. But in reality, women tend to more successfully participate in multitasking than men. Let's leave it like that.
Now let's talk a little about self-care. So activities that will help you to improve your mental well-being, your physical well-being. And I'm speaking about doing exercise, keeping in shape, going to the gym. What other things can people do to promote their physical and mental health?
Well, apart from the basics, which you mentioned, going to the gym, why not take it a step further? Why not have a massage? You possibly don't have time every day, but I don't know, once a week, a weekly massage. I really like the idea. I haven't put my own thoughts into action, but I do like the idea of a massage every week. I think probably we should be able to find 1 hour to have a massage. I guess, though, the money might be a problem for some people. How much does a massage cost these days? I'm not sure.
I've never had one. Well, not in Spain anyway. When I was traveling years ago in Thailand, I had a few massages in Buddhist temples, but I can't remember how much it cost. I don't think they're that expensive. I think it depends where you go. But if you can afford it, if your budget does stretch to that kind of self-care, I think it's a really good thing to do, because it's important to take care of yourself to avoid burnout. So make sure you block some time on your calendar and make it an obligation to look after yourself for an hour, a couple of hours, if not per day, then per week.
And as well as going to the gym or exercise, if you can play a particular sport, for example, if you join a team, if you've got time, not if it's going to stress you out even more, but if you've got time to join a team, that can be a very nice way of relaxing and socializing at the same time, so that it's not all about your professional life, but you can spend time on your social life, or just a hobby which isn't a sport. So Craig, apart from biscuit eating, have you got any more hobbies?
I like cycling. Sometimes I take my bike out and ride along the beach here in Valencia. And that, as you said before, just helps me to clear my head, get some fresh air, go outside, see some people, look at the sea, look at the trees. So that's what I enjoy doing. What about you?
For me, it's mainly biscuit eating, but also chocolate eating, and sometimes chocolate biscuit eating. I combine the two.
So you've got multiple hobbies.
Yes, I multitask. I eat biscuits, I eat chocolate at the same time. That's multitasking.
And actually, as a man, I do say congratulations, because I have seen you do two things at once. I have seen you dunk your biscuits in your tea and eat them. So you're kind of drinking and eating at the same time. Well done. Another thing you can do, if it's possible, now we know it's not always possible depending on your work arrangements, but you could negotiate or organize flexible work arrangements, which means you could change the hours that you work. Now, it's not always possible. Obviously, if you're working in a shop that opens and closes at a particular time, if you're a bus driver, maybe a health professional, you can't really play too much with your hours. But if you are working at home, if you're a remote worker, a knowledge worker, then you can speak to your boss, you can arrange a more flexible working schedule and position your working hours so that you do create those boundaries between work and self-care and personal life.
Communication is a very important aspect if you want to achieve the right work-life balance. In other words, as Craig's already mentioned, as regards flexi time, you need to talk to your employer, but you also need to talk to your family and perhaps friends and other people as well about what your expectations are. What do you want? What's the balance you're looking for? Some people are happy to dedicate 80% of their life to work. If that's your case, great for you. For me, no. For me, more like about 50, 60% is more my kind of mixture. And there are other people, lucky people, you might say, who only dedicate about 20% of their life to work. It's up to you. But you need to discuss it if you got an employer with them. You also obviously need to talk to your husband, wife, maybe even your kids, or maybe your parents. So people need to know what to expect from you, and you need to know what to expect from them. It needs to be a two-way dialogue, let's say, a two-way discussion.
Yeah, and setting realistic goals is important as well. So don't overcommit, which means saying yes to too many things, which again could lead to burnout. Make sure, as we said before, you prioritize your health, your well-being, and saying no correctly and politely and declining things that overload your schedule or make your schedule too busy and too difficult to manage. It's very important to say no sometimes. Are you good at saying no to things?
Yes.
Okay.
No, fairly good. No, I was just trying to be funny there. I'm no expert, but I'm not bad. I probably could be a bit more polite about it. I try to be, but I sometimes come across as a bit too frank. Sometimes friends.
What does frank mean?
Frank means straight
Honest.
to the point, just being honest without trying to decorate what you're saying, just saying it as it is. So sometimes friends say to me, hey, we're going to meet next week on Friday. Are you coming? And I say no. And they'll say, why not? Too busy. And maybe I don't go into the reasons, and it sounds a bit rude, perhaps. They might think, oh, well, he doesn't want to meet us. But no, that's not the case. I just know that there's no way I'm going to be free at that time. But what I probably should say is, yeah, guys, I'm afraid I'm going to be a bit busy. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. But I have some corrections to do. So sometimes I'm a bit too frank, but don't be like me, listeners. Try to be a bit more polite about it. I think, Craig, you're better at this than me.
Well, thank you. But I've thought about it and I've read a little bit about it. But from an English perspective, it is important, as Reza just said, as many native speakers do in English, apologize before you refuse, apologize before you say no with those expressions. I'm afraid I can't. So use I'm afraid. Or I'm really sorry, but. Or, oh, I'd love to. I would love to is I'd love to. I'd love to come. I'd love to do it. But unfortunately, and then you say your excuse. And I've found that it's really useful to soften the no by offering alternative suggestions. So with Reza's example, with friends, oh, can you come out on Saturday? We're going to a restaurant. Come with us. I'm sorry, no, I can't make it on Saturday, but I will be able to make it 2 weeks from now. So you offer another option, another possibility, although you've refused or said no to the original offer. So you can use expressions like, why don't we make arrangements when I'm not so busy? Or I'm really sorry, I can't help you with that now, but you could come back tomorrow, for example. Or if your boss asks you to do something and you're so busy and you have no time, you just say, yes, of course I can do that. But what would you like me to postpone so that I have the time to do it? So what you're saying to your boss is this more important than what I'm already doing now? In which case, yes, I'll do it, but I can't do what I was going to do. So you're postponing something, you're putting off work you already have if your boss comes to you with more work, and that way you're not overloading yourself.
Yes, I think that's very important because I'm always really suspicious of people who you ask for help, particularly at work, and they say, oh, no, I'm much too busy. I can't, sorry. But they never make an alternative suggestion.
Yeah.
I think, oh, you're always busy, are you? Okay, but what about next week? But they never, ever make that alternative suggestion. I'm much more likely to believe somebody says, look, I'm really sorry I can't, but, what about next week sometime? Or can I call you back later today and we'll talk about it? But people just say, no, I'm too busy. I don't buy it. I don't swallow it. That means I don't believe it. It's like, yeah, maybe you are really busy now, but you're not always going to be busy. So people who always are busy and never offer an alternative, I get the feeling they're lying. I just don't trust people who always say that.
It's also about managing expectations. And sometimes students send me work and say, oh, can you correct this? Or can you do this for me? And I often say, yes, I can. I can't do it at the moment because I have too much work today, but I will get to it as soon as I can. So you don't actually give a deadline, a date when you will do it, and you're kind of managing expectations, letting the other person know that, yes, you will do it, but you don't know when. So that sometimes helps to not get overloaded with work you have to do. Now, we know you're all busy with your schedules, your family, your work, and your time, but we'd really like to hear from you so that you can practice your English and improve your speaking. How is your work and personal life balanced? Do you feel a bit overwhelmed at times? And why don't you tell us what the biggest challenges are that you're facing at the moment with work-life balance? How can people do that, Reza?
The best thing you could do, and the quickest thing, is to leave a voice message. There's a maximum of 90 seconds, a minute and a half, if you use the SpeakPipe option. There's a link in the show notes. It's speakpipe.com/inglespodcast. If you follow that link, you can leave an audio message of up to a minute and a half. But Craig, if people have a little bit more time, or they're simply a bit too embarrassed to speak, how could they write to us?
Well, if you want to write to us, you won't be multitasking because you'd have to sit with your phone or at your computer to do it. But emails go to me, Craig, Craig, @inglespodcast.com. And to contact Reza, send your emails to belfastreza, Reza, @gmail.com.
Now, if you're lucky enough to have a bit of time available for study, in other words, your work-life balance is going pretty well, and you're a Spanish speaker, you might be interested in visiting the Mansión Inglés website. There's free material there. There are also some paid materials, such as ebooks and audios for self-study. Why don't you check it out? It's store.mansioningles.net.
We also want to thank our lovely Patreon supporters who are helping the podcast for as little as $1 per month. And if you join the program, you also get instant access to the transcriptions of this podcast, which will allow you to multitask because you can listen to us and you can read what we say at the same time. For more information, go to Patreon, that's patreon.com/inglespodcast.
Now, it would be nice to have enough time to name every single supporter on the Patreon scheme, but we haven't got time. So as usual, we will just mention our latest supporters who've joined us this month. A big thank you to Victor and Roberto Ruiz, as well as all our other long-term supporters.
Yes, thank you very, very much. Now, in next week's podcast, due to popular request, we're going to speak about 8 more common colloquial expressions. So that will be part 12. And we've already recorded 11 previous collections of colloquial expressions. So if you want to sound more like a native speaker and learn some, come back next week. And until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.